Welcome to the Wind Up with Will, everyone. I'm your host, Will, here with another episode today. We're going to be covering college football again. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving last week. And I hope everyone's enjoying finally got Christmas season here. Which also means we are in conference championship weekend. So I'm going to go quickly through the current rankings by the College Football Playoff Committee that came out this past Tuesday. I'm not going to go too much into my thoughts on that because I'm going to give my roughly my top 15 as well as how I would rank the teams and the playoffs currently. I'm also going to go through my conference championship picks and then possibly what the committee is going to do with teams after this weekend. The final playoff selection show is on Sunday. I'm not sure what time Sunday. I've not looked at that. I know it is Sunday though. I think it's Sunday night, either late Sunday afternoon or Sunday night, and that's when they'll reveal the final playoff rankings. Um, Sorry, I've got something popping up on my screen. I don't know why this is. This is annoying. Why is this on my screen? Okay, there we go. I don't know why something popped up like that. But anyway, so very quickly, I'm going to go through the top 20, the committee's top 25, and then I'm going to go into my conference championship pick since we already have some games going on tonight. So this is what the committee ranked teams on Tuesday. They had James Madison at 25, North Texas at 24, Iowa at 23, Georgia Tech at 22, Houston at 21, Tulane at 20, at Michigan at 19, Arizona at 18, Virginia at 17, USC at 16, Utah at 15, Vanderbilt at 14, Texas at 13. Getting into the top 12, we've got Miami at 12, BYU at 11, Notre Dame at 10, Alabama at 9, Oklahoma at 8, Texas A&M at 7, Ole Miss at 6, Oregon at 5, Texas Tech at 4, Georgia at 3, Indiana at 2, and Ohio State at 1. Again, something is popping up on my screen. Why is it doing that? I don't understand. Why I keep getting pop-ups for an app that I don't have opened at the moment. I don't understand that. But so I'll just give you what this is. What the current this is off of ESPN if it will load. So that is the current rankings right there. That's what that's what the College Football Playoff Committee, that's what their rankings are. So if the playoffs were to be today, the top four seeds of Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, and Texas Tech would have byes. The BYU at 11 and Miami at 12 would fall out, and you'd have Tulane currently, as they're the highest ranked conference leader from the American. They would be at 11, or sorry, they would be at 12, and Virginia, who's at number 17, would jump up to 11. So, the first round matchups, you would have not Texas, you'd have Oregon at 5 hosting Tulane at 12, Ole Miss at 6 hosting Virginia, 7 Texas A&M with hosting in a rematch from the regular season Notre Dame, and the 8-9 matchup, a rematch of the regular season, Oklahoma and Alabama. And it'd be interesting because if that were to hold, A&M and Notre Dame's a rematch of the regular season, but instead of at South Bend, it's at Texas A&M at College Station. Same thing with Oklahoma, Alabama. Instead of being at Alabama, it would be at Norman, Oklahoma. So that would be very interesting if those two matchups did end up happening. I'm not going to go quite into the rankings quite yet because I wanted to give the context of where teams are currently ranked, and we're going to discuss that a little bit in the conference championships. So currently tonight we've got two conference championships we're actually going to expand this to all the FBS because we have more than just. We've got four of the. Yes, we've got four of the conference championships going on tonight. Boise State and UNLV. That's a game of probably no consequence, unless James Madison. Well, I'll get to that in a second. We've got UNLV and Boise State playing, North Texas Tulane, Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State. So UNLV, Boise State's the Mountain West, North Texas and Tulane is the American. Kennesaw State and Jacksonville State are Conference USA. Troy and James Madison in the Sun Belt. And tomorrow we've got BYU Texas Tech in the Big 12 Championship, Miami of Ohio and Western Michigan in the MAC, Georgia and Alabama in the SEC, Indiana and Ohio State, the number one and number two matchup in the conference championship game for the Big 10 tomorrow night, and then Duke, Virginia in the ACC championship tomorrow night. So, what's at stake here? BYU currently being ranked 11. If they lose to Texas Tech, based on how they are ranked currently, they would not make the playoffs. Now, the committee has moved some teams around without them having played, which is kind of interesting. So there is a chance that without there is a slim chance that BYU could get in without a win. I doubt it though. From where they're ranked, they would have to win this to get in to the college football playoff. If they win, they are in, and I think Texas Tech would clearly stay in, being ranked 4. I think they're safe. They're very safe being ranked at 4. I think really only the teams hovering around that kind of bubble of like 10, 9 down are kind of at risk of you could fall out. So that's what's at stake in the BYU Texas Tech game. And the UNLV Boise State game is interesting because in the ACC doomsday scenario, where if Duke, who is 7-5, were to beat Virginia in the ACC championship game, that would knock Virginia out of the playoff, clearly. But Duke probably does not have a strong enough resume at 7-5 to get in. So you have a chance there of James Madison, who would be if they were to win the Sun Belt, would be the next highest ranked conference champion behind whoever wins in the American between Tulane and North Texas. So that would be interesting. But if James Madison were to lose to Troy, then the UNLV Boise State matchup could matter. Or the committee could still choose to take Duke, which would be interesting, but I don't see them taking Duke. I mean, they could. I wouldn't put it past the committee, but I think the UNLV Boise State matchup could end up mattering if James Madison were to lose and if Duke were to beat Virginia, because the committee could choose the Mountain West champion as that fifth conference champion. Because remember, the 12-team playoff, it's the 5 highest ranked conference champions plus 7 at-large teams. So it doesn't matter what conference they come from. It's just the 5 highest-ranked conference champions, which means very plausibly there is a chance UNLV or Boise State could get in, but they have to have a lot go their way. The other conference championship game, the SEC, between Georgia and Alabama is interesting because Alabama is kind of on that bubble, like I mentioned. If they lose, they're probably still in. And I think from the precedent that the committee set last year with SMU going and playing in the ACC championship game and losing a close game, that they kept them in the field and they made the playoffs. And I think it's kind of the same case with Alabama. They're not wanting to punish a team for playing in the conference title game, where if they win, they would clearly probably jump up into the top 4. So I don't think they're going to punish Alabama for losing to Georgia. The only way I think they would is if they got ran over by Georgia by like 21 or 30 points, probably closer to 30 points, which I don't really see that happening in that game. But if it did, that would be where Alabama falls out. And it's very interesting that Alabama moved up to number 9 because, as I said, it's the 5 highest ranked conference champions. Every spot kind of seems to be well, these are the teams that are in the two slots that are kind of up for grabs because of the two conference champions that aren't ranked in the top 12 but will jump up to there. It would be in the 11 and 12 spot with Virginia, more than likely Virginia if they win the ACC, if they do win the ACC, and the American champion. So the next two conference champ, the last two conference champions that win will be 11 and 12, more than likely in the seeding. So Alabama last week was at 10, Notre Dame was at 9, and Notre Dame having soundly beat a bad Stanford team, and Alabama struggling with a bad Auburn team and winning only by 7. Well, Notre Dame wins by about 30. Alabama jumped Notre Dame for some odd reason. It does not make any sense. It's one of those things where the committee just kind of seems like, well, we maybe should have ranked them ahead of Notre Dame the previous week, so we're going to move them up there now. That's not what you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be ranking teams based on where they are now and what they did in the given games already, and not, well, we should have had them ranked here last week. That's where we're moving. I don't think that that's the right way to do it, and it just kind of looks like, I'm not saying that this is what it is, but it kind of looks like um, that moving Alabama to 9 would be in some ways a thought process of, well, it gets them off the bubble there at 10. If they lose in the SEC championship game, we could drop them back down to 10 and Notre Dame up to 9. And it also could solve the committee's issue of Notre Dame and Miami of, of people saying, well, Miami has the head to head, they have the same record. Miami's ranked, what did I say that they were ranked now? Uh, I think they're what, 12th? Yeah, they're 12th. So if Alabama were to lose and drops back down to 10 and Notre Dame moves up back up to 9, it puts a little more separation between Miami and Notre Dame, which to me, that kind of thought process in itself, which I've had people who want Notre Dame to be in and people who don't want Notre Dame to be in the playoffs. Maybe shouldn't say want, but think Notre Dame should be in the playoffs or don't think Notre Dame should be in the playoffs over Miami. Miami should be over Notre Dame. Notre Dame should be over Miami. People on both sides of the fence just talking about the committee's logic of, well, they're not ranked next to one another, so Miami can't move ahead of Notre Dame based on head to head, which to me is just a silly argument. I think it's illogical. Um, to me, it's just illogical. It shouldn't matter where they're ranked of, well, they're not close enough to one another. It's, do you think that they're a better team? Do you think the head to head matters? And that's kind of the annoying thing with that. It's just not a very logical thing. But I think that might be what the committee's doing at moving Alabama up to 9 of, well, if they lose in the SEC championship game, we can easily drop them back down to 10 and they're not out of the playoffs. And Notre Dame would move back up to 9 and avoid or being farther away from Miami and the head to head. I don't know if that's the logic they're going for, or if they just thought that we dropped Alabama too much after they lost to Oklahoma. I don't know the logic there, but the committee either way flipped Alabama and Notre Dame, which didn't make any sense. They also moved. I think they dropped A&M a little too much after their loss to Texas. I still think they should maybe be ahead of Ole Miss. I don't know. Um, honestly, well, I'll get to that in a second. I think I've got a correction to make here. I'm just going to make it real quick. A mistake on my rankings. I'm going to make this real quick. Okay, there we go. I got that corrected. And before I move on to my rankings, I'm going to give my conference championship game picks, which I meant to do as soon as possible. I got kind of caught off talking about the rankings. I honestly should do a video, and it's what I'm going to do Sunday night when the final rankings come out. I'm going to give a video on my thoughts on the final rankings, and maybe I can go on a rant there where I've got a little more time instead of talking about other things. So, as I said, we got some games going on tonight. I think James Madison wins the Sun Belt, but I think that's probably going to be a game of no consequence because I think Virginia's going to beat Duke. They played in the regular season, and Virginia beat Duke at Duke by 17 points. At least I think it was at Duke. Let me double check that. Yes, it was at Duke. They beat Duke by 17 points. I think Virginia's going to win easily in that game. But I'm going to give my projections. So I think James Madison wins the Sun Belt. Conference USA, I'm going to pick Jacksonville State, even though that game's at halftime right now and they're losing 7-0. I think Jacksonville State wins that game, wins Conference USA in back-to-back years. North Texas and Tulane's going on right now. It's 7-7 in that game. I'm picking North Texas. I think they've been underranked. I think Tulane's a good team. I think as we can see at 7-7 at pretty much the end of the first quarter, it's going to be a good game. I'm picking North Texas to win it. I think Boise State wins the Mountain West over UNLV, but I think that's going to be a game of no consequence as well because I think tomorrow night, I think Virginia is going to beat Duke. I think they beat them by a similar score. I'll go 31-17. They don't quite get 17 points on them again, but I think they win that game easily. What is the odds in this game? Why do I not have... that is weird that I do not have... I don't have betting odds. Why do I not have betting odds on that game? Let me go, maybe if I move it to the top 25. Big 12 championship. I don't have betting odds on this. Okay, that's an issue. I don't have the spread. Let's go here real quick. We're going to pull up. I wonder if it's because I've not updated my app. Because I should have. There should be lines on those games. Maybe they haven't come out yet, but you would think that they're out. Okay. There we go. Virginia's a 4-point favorite over Duke. To me, that's wild. I think they're a better team than that. Like I said, I think they win by at least 2 scores in that game. I think Virginia wins easily. So, our other game, our other big championship games tomorrow, BYU at Tech, or sorry, it's not BYU at Texas. The game's in Arlington, the Big 12 championship. BYU Texas Tech played in AT&T Stadium. I actually got to see that, and I actually got to go to that stadium and watch the Cowboys Eagles a few weeks ago. So I'll talk about that more in a future video. But Texas Tech's a 12.5-point favorite. I think the game might be closer than that. I think it could be a 10-point game, but I'm picking Texas Tech to win it. I think they're the better team. They've dominated their schedule. The only game they lost was by, I think it was 4 points at Arizona State. Yeah, 4 points at Arizona State. I don't see Texas Tech losing to BYU. I think they beat them for the second time this year and knock BYU's chances out of the playoffs. The SEC championship game tomorrow is Georgia Alabama. Georgia is a 1.5-point favorite. It's basically, I think that's what the bettors call a pick 'em. Of just you pick who you think is going to win. I think Georgia's going to win the game. I think they're going to get revenge on Alabama from earlier in the season. I think Kirby Smart gets revenge. I think Georgia. To me, it's crazy that after Texas A&M having a breakout year, Ole Miss having a phenomenal season, Oklahoma having a good season in SEC play, that we still get Georgia and Alabama for the third time in 5 years in the SEC championship game. It's crazy to me that that's still the matchup we got this year with how good other teams were in the SEC. If only A&M could have just beat Texas, that would have solved some problems here. And maybe not solved some problems, but we've had a different matchup. But I think Georgia wins this game. I think they're a solid team. Um, I think Alabama, to me, I just, even though they have all these ranked wins, I just have questions about them losing to Oklahoma at home and losing to FSU to start the year. And I know people are going to say that's the first game of the year, but to me, that's just been in the back of my mind all season long of how in the world can they lose to that team? Every team has that one game every year, but maybe not every team, but a lot of teams have one bad game a year. Maybe that's theirs, but I think in the back of my mind that that's what I think of this Alabama team is that they have a chance where they could lose. I think they could lose to a lot of teams, so I'm going to go Georgia in that game. Um, so I've picked Texas Tech, I've picked Georgia, I've picked Virginia, I've picked North Texas to beat Tulane. I don't have. Let me see if I can get a spread on that game. Let's go to GameCast on that. What is the spread? North Texas was a 1.5 point favorite. I don't know why you're playing an ad. I am not sponsored by Fazoli's. Do not listen to that advertisement. North Texas is a 1.5 point favorite. I'm picking North Texas. As I said, I think North Texas wins the game. I'll say North Texas wins by 3. So that leaves our Big Ten championship game between the number one and number two. Number one, Ohio State, number two, Indiana. And I think it's the first 1-2 matchup in a conference championship game in at least 20 years. I forget the exact year that I heard earlier this week. But Ohio State is a 4 point favorite in that game. I think this is going to be a phenomenal game. I cannot wait to watch this tomorrow. Obviously, I am pulling for Indiana just because they have not won. I don't think they've won a Big Ten championship since the '60s. And I think that was even a tie for a Big Ten championship. So like this is extremely to me a massive moment in the college football year or just and the history of college football. So I think this is an amazing turnaround for Indiana, and I'm looking forward to this game. Even if Indiana loses, just for them playing in this game means a lot to them. I think it'll be a close game. I think Indiana covers. Ohio State wins by 3. Give me Ohio State to win this game. I would love Indiana to win it just for the sake of their program and how great a coach Kurt Segnetti is and their turnaround, and love to see someone else win instead of Ohio State. As a Notre Dame fan, I'm not a big fan of Ohio State for a lot of reasons, but it would be nice to see Indiana win, but I think Ohio State wins that game. I think they're clearly the best team in the country. They're the defending national champions. They've dominated everyone on their schedule, and I think it'll be a phenomenal game between those two teams tomorrow. But I think Ohio State wins. So that leaves where I have teams ranked currently to talk about and how I think I maybe should have talked about that after I talked about where the committee had teams ranked. But we'll just go through where I have teams ranked currently and how I have the playoffs at the moment. Um, well, I guess my rankings don't really alter from how front based on my conference championship picks. But I'll give a quick rundown of that. So for my rankings, I have Texas at 15. I have Virginia at 14. I'm going to move my phone over here so because I'm going to have to move my notes here in a second so I can show you what I have. I've got Texas at 15, Virginia at 14, Vanderbilt at 13, Alabama at 12. I think they're just a little overrated. And just as I said, that Florida State loss just hangs in my mind. I've got BYU at 11. I've got Notre Dame at 10. Miami at 9. Oklahoma at 8. Oregon at 7. Ole Miss at 6. A&M at 5. Texas A&M at 5. Georgia at 4. Texas Tech at 3. Indiana at 2. And Ohio State at 1. So some logic for me. I think head-to-head matters, and so that's why I have Miami ranked ahead of Notre Dame. But I think Notre Dame is one of the 10 best teams in the country, one of the 12 best at the very least. So it's hard for me not to put them in. I think BYU has an awesome resume. It's just really hard for me to put them in. Oregon, in the last rankings, you go back to that, I had them outside the top 12. How they finished the season with wins over a decent Minnesota team, winning against a ranked USC team pretty soundly, and going and winning at Washington, who went like 9-3 this year. Um, great, great way to end the season for Oregon. I think that jumps them into my top 12. They were going to make the playoffs anyway, where the committee had them ranked. But I just thought for the longest time they were overranked the whole season because they really hadn't played anyone besides Indiana and Penn State. Penn State fell off a cliff. Indiana was really good and and Indiana beat Oregon by 10 points. So I thought Oregon was overranked and overhyped for most of the season. But the way they finished the season, I've got to put them up there. I think they have a better resume at that point than teams like Notre Dame, Miami, and Oklahoma. However, I think Ole Miss and Texas A&M and Georgia are better teams than Oregon, so I have them ranked ahead of Oregon. Again, Miami's head-to-head over Notre Dame matters, but I think Notre Dame is one of the top 10 teams, so that's why I have them ranked ahead of BYU. I think both of those teams are better than BYU, but BYU has a really good resume, and I would really love to put them in, but I just don't see a way for them to make the playoffs. Give me a second. My computer is dying on me, so we're gonna have to plug in the charger here. There we go. Um, Sorry, I've got a bit of a cold too. I've been a little sick this past week. That's why I didn't get a video out earlier in the week. Um, so in my playoff scenario, and what I changed while ago is I had Ole Miss and Texas A&M backwards, so I flipped them. That's what I did a while ago. Um, and then in the group, so I only ranked the top 15. I didn't. It wasn't to me. It wasn't really necessary to rank from behind 15 because really the bubble teams are really from Oklahoma all the way to Texas at 15 in my rankings. Oklahoma's the only reason they're bubbles. They've got two losses, and they lost to Texas, who is kind of in that bubble area. Miami is not playing an ACC championship game. They have two losses to teams that are unranked, and SMU and Louisville, even though those are two good teams, and I think those teams don't get enough credit because people act like they're nobodies. They're good teams, but they're unranked. They're not in the top 25 anymore. Um, Notre Dame, its two losses are to A&M and Miami, two teams that are in the playoffs. I've got them at 10. I think they're one of the 10 best teams based on how they've played. BYU at 11. They're a really good team. I don't see them being better than those other teams. I would absolutely love to have a runner-up from the Big 12 in, or a runner-up from the ACC. It's not going to happen with the ACC. Well, it is with how I have it ranked, but I don't think BYU gets in, and I don't have them ranked there. Alabama, I have at 12. To me, that Florida State loss just hangs in my mind, and I think the teams I have ranked in front of them, I think, are better than. I think they have. I don't think Notre Dame doesn't necessarily have a better resume, but I think Notre Dame has played better. And for the people who love the hypotheticals that for years have talked about, well, what if Alabama and Notre Dame played on a neutral field, or if Alabama and Illinois played on a neutral field, or if Alabama played Missouri on a neutral field, or if Alabama played Miami on a neutral field, or whoever Alabama played, it was always, well, who would be favored? Who would be favored? Who would be favored? Like that's what you heard all the time. Well, the odds have come out like what the odds would be if these teams played, and I think that's what somewhat of the thinking. And I mean, this is my thinking as well in some ways. It's been said that the odds would favor Notre Dame if they played Alabama on a neutral field. They'd be like a 4 or 5 point favorite. So there you go. The odds makers, think that Notre Dame is the better team. So I have Notre Dame ranked ahead of Alabama, and that's not my whole reason. I just personally, from watching them play, I think Notre Dame is the better team. So I have them ranked ahead. Vanderbilt has a great case at 13. Um, and Alabama has a great case at 12. They've got a ton of ranked wins. The Florida State loss is a horrible one in my mind, and losing to Oklahoma at home hurts them. I think the teams I have ranked in front of them either have a better resume or are better teams than them. Oklahoma holds the tiebreaker, so I have them higher. Vanderbilt has a really good team this year, absolutely phenomenal, and it's heartbreaking they're not going to make the playoffs. You only get 12 teams, only 12 of them can go in, and Vanderbilt's on the outside looking in. Virginia at 14, based on mines and rankings and how I picked them to win the ACC championship. I have them in the playoffs. I've got Texas at 15 outside the playoffs. So, how my playoff seeding would work, the four byes would be OSU, Indiana, Texas Tech, and Georgia. Oklahoma at the 8th seed would host the 9 seed Miami. The 6 seed Ole Miss would host the 11 seed Virginia. The 7 seed Oregon would host the 10 seed Notre Dame. The 5 seed Texas A&M would host the 12 seed North Texas. This would be a great playoffs. I on my notes, I'll show you my rankings as well as what the bracket would look like. I had to do some editing because I had some teams ranked backwards of where they should be. So as you can see, this is my rankings here. Those are my rankings. I mentioned the group of 5 down here, just some teams that were in the mix, as well as the ACC team, the team in the ACC championship game in Duke. So I had the ACC runner-up and champion getting in mine, or one of the runner-ups in Miami, and then Virginia, and then this is the bracket over here on this side. Had to do some editing there as well. But I'm going to briefly talk about how I think what the committee will do for their actual rankings on Sunday. So if North Texas wins, which I think they will, and Virginia wins, I think those two teams get in. Those will clearly be 11 and 12. Virginia will be 11. North Texas will be 12. Let's go to the committee's actual rankings. So they would jump up. I don't think Notre Dame moves. I don't think, even if BYU gets shellacked and moves down, that Miami will jump Notre Dame. Now, this committee has moved teams around all year. Miami has slowly moved back up. The committee's been like, well, we probably had them ranked too low, so we'll move them back up. Like they moved Alabama this week for no reason, and Ole Miss for no reason. Well, we think that we should have had them ranked higher, so we'll move them up. So they very well could, but as Notre Dame's athletic director even said this week, if Miami was going to be ranked ahead of Notre Dame, they already would be. When neither team is playing this weekend, there's no reason to move them. I don't think Miami flips Notre Dame based on how the committee has them ranked. Again, I've already told you my opinion. I think head-to-head matters. In my own rankings, I have Miami ahead of Notre Dame. I'm just telling you what the committee is going to do this weekend. I think they will leave Notre Dame at 10. I think unless Alabama, well, I'll say this. I think what they will do is if Georgia beats Alabama, which I picked Georgia to do, I think Alabama will drop down to 10 again, and Notre Dame will move back up to 9. They will correct the injustice they did this weekend, but they would have done it to keep Alabama in the playoffs, which to me is kind of sneaky, or at least that's their logic, but they could just left Alabama at 10, and if they lose, still kept them in the playoffs. So that might not even be their logic. Again, as I said earlier, that might not even be their logic. I don't know why they moved Alabama ahead of Notre Dame. But I think what will more than likely happen is either Alabama, if they lose, will either stay at 9 or they will drop back down to 10 and Notre Dame will move up to 9. Oklahoma will stay at 8. A&M will stay at 7. Ole Miss will stay at 6. Oregon will stay at 5. Texas Tech, if they win, and Georgia wins, will stay at 4. If Alabama wins, maybe they move up. Maybe they move up to 3 and Alabama moves to 4. That would be interesting to see. I do think if the Indiana-Ohio State game is close, no matter who wins it, if it's close, the loser will stay at number 2. I think that's how it is. Both those teams have been phenomenal all year. I don't see that changing how the seeding would be. So let's just do what the playoff will more than likely look like from how the committee has teams ranked. So if North Texas wins, if Virginia wins, they would be 11 and 12. There would be 11 and 12 seeds. Notre Dame would be 10. Alabama would stay at 9, more than likely, possibly. I don't know. Maybe not. Oklahoma would be 8. A&M 7. Ole Miss 6. Oregon 5. Let's say Texas Tech stays at 4. Georgia stays at 3. Indiana at 2. Ohio State at 1. So the top 4 get buys. Oregon, and that would be Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Texas Tech. Oregon would host. They would host North Texas. Ole Miss would host Virginia. A&M would host Notre Dame, and Oklahoma would host Alabama. I think that's how the playoffs more than likely will shape up, unless Alabama and Notre Dame get moved around in the case of the SEC championship game. I think really what you need to look out for the SEC is the SEC championship game, the Big 12 championship game, and the ACC championship game, as well as the American, because that's going to determine a team as well, regardless. So those are my thoughts on this. As I said earlier, I think that North Texas will win, that Virginia will win, and Texas Tech will win to solidify their spots. Georgia's going to win. I think Ohio State's going to win. And yeah, that's all I got for this video. This video went on a long time. I did some rambling and kind of jumped around a little bit, but that's all I have for this video. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know who you think is going to win the national championship this year. Did I get my rankings right? How would you rank your teams? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.